Aiko was running on the subway. She was panting and running and barely made it in time. She was catching her breath and she saw a kind smile. She saw him every day for the past few weeks, even when she came a bit earlier or later than her usual time. She smiled back. The stranger on the train always managed to light up her mornings. He had the kindest smile and the warmest vibes. They had never spoken to each other, but they would exchange a warm smile every day. He would be there when she went to work in the mornings and also when she went back home. It seemed like a miracle how their timings matched so perfectly. Aiko worked as a nurse in the Tanaka hospital. She loved her job, and helping people made her feel genuinely happy. She was about to turn 32 this year and was still single. Though everything else seemed perfect in her life, she was somewhere lonely deep down. She wanted to find someone she could go back home to and kids who would be running around the house calling her mom. She sighed and went on with work. And by the time she was going back home, she was tired and her body was sore. She saw the stranger again and he smiled again. His gentle smile made her smile back. The train was more empty than usual that day, and something about his sympathizing smile broke her. The strong exterior she had broke, and she started crying. She started crying and wouldn't stop. The stranger panicked and sat straight in front of her. Hesitantly, he asked if she was fine, for which she told him no. He waited until she calmed down and smiled again, and he said, "It's all okay, don't worry." She stopped crying and thanked the stranger. Just those simple words helped her. She thanked him and asked his name. He seemed shocked, but smiled and replied, "Akira." She introduced herself and told him how she genuinely appreciated what he did. He got down at his stop while asking Aiko to take care. The small encounter made Aiko cheerful while she awaited their next meeting. They exchanged smiles like usual, but never spoke to each other again. Aiko was growing anxious, and she wanted to know Akira more and more. She finally decided, and on one night on their way back, she spoke to Akira again. He smiled as usual, and they spoke all the way. Aiko asked if he wanted to hang out sometime, but he apologized and told her he couldn't, but promised to meet her the next afternoon. She asked if a Japanese restaurant was fine, but he insisted on taking takeout and talking in the park. Aiko was fine with it, and they spoke for 2 hours until she realized she was really late. They promised to meet each other soon and left. This went on for weeks, with them taking a takeaway and chatting in the park. Aiko looked forward to this one time in her whole day. They got to know about each other's likes and dislikes, the food they liked and didn't. Aiko wanted to go on an actual date, for which Akira always had a reason to refuse. The next day, she asked again, and when he refused, she got really angry and shouted at him and told him that she liked him, and yet he didn't understand. Akira was shocked, and there were tears in his eyes, and he told her they were out of joy. He agreed and told her they would see the cherry blossoms that week. Aiko got excited and got ready. Akira was dressed in blue washed jeans and a simple black tee. She couldn't take her eyes off him. She was overjoyed. They went and saw many places, and she had packed a homemade meal. Aiko felt like it was the best day in her life. Aiko told Akira only he was able to make her that happy, for which he smiled, but he looked like he was rather sad. They went to buy ice cream, and the guy asked if she would eat too. She was confused, and he told her that they would melt, and instead she should come back after eating the first one. She was confused and annoyed. Akira was right next to her, and the guy wouldn't notice. She turned back, and Akira wasn't there. She realized she didn't even have his number. She waited for him a while and searched everywhere, but he was gone. She doesn't see him the next day on the train. 2 weeks pass, and there is no sign of Akira. She was worried and couldn't stop thinking about him. She was thinking and driving on the Saturday night when she crashed into a tree. She had come out for fresh air at midnight, and it was a secluded area. She was bleeding badly. Being a nurse, she knew that if she didn't get help soon, she would be a gunner. She closed her eyes, thinking about how she spent the last 32 years of her life. She woke up and she was in a hospital. They told her that someone had called the ambulance, and even a minute later, she would have been dead. She got up and saw Akira sitting in front of her. He was glowing, like he would fly away. Akira smiled, and he told her he would tell her everything. He asked her if she remembers the patient from Tokyo Hospital, where she was working before. He told her he had bandages throughout his body and couldn't move or eat. Aiko said yes, she did. He smiled and asked his name. She thought hard, and she covered her mouth with her hand and said, Akira. Akira smiled and told her that was him. But Aiko couldn't believe it because he had died after 2 weeks in the same hospital. Akira smiled and thanked her. He told her that she was there when he was dying and alone. The man had a wish that he didn't want to be alone, and everyone was busy, but Aiko had stayed with him for the 2 weeks he was there. She read him books and brought him his favorite movies. She wanted him to be happy while he left. Akira could never really leave peacefully, as he wanted to thank her. He saw the cheerful Aiko was now sad every day and couldn't help but talk to her. He had interfered with the world where he had called the ambulance as spirits weren't supposed to. He broke a primary rule by changing the future, by saving her, for which he would be sent to hell. Aiko started crying, asking him not to leave. He smiled gently and told her he wants to see her happy. He told her he will be waiting to meet her again somewhere, and told her her smile will give him strength, and vanished. Aiko cried for days and days, and finally got back to work. 2 years passed. Aiko enjoyed her work, traveled the world, and lived the happy life Akira wanted. She smiled and looked forward to each day. Akira was gone, but she never would forget to cherish the life she had at the cost of his soul. Maybe someday in the next life they would meet.